speaking of drama and controversy, Kliff Kingsbury was the Las Vegas Raiders offense coordinator on Friday when we did our show. Congratulations, Kliff. We even ran a clip of AQ Shipley talking about Kliff Kingsbury, how he's a grinder. He's there first before anybody else, loves film, will get the most out of his players. And then all of a sudden it starts lingering over the weekend. Actually, he's Washington Commanders offensive coordinator. I heard it was a contractual dispute with the Raiders. What took place? How did we get here? And congrats to the Commanders, I guess, finding an incredible offense coordinator. But what the hell happened with Las Vegas and Kliff Kingsbury, Shefty?
It was a contractual dispute. There was a disagreement over the terms. And my understanding, unconfirmed, but my understanding is that when we look at these teams around the league right now, they're offering their assistant coaches, by and large, 3-year contracts. And in this particular case, I think the Raiders are at 2, and I think Kliff Kingsbury's got 2 years left at least on the deal that the Cardinals are currently paying. So there really wouldn't have been any added guaranteed money by taking it on. Now, to me, it doesn't seem like a big deal, and maybe I'm missing something, but there was that disagreement over the 3rd year that I believe contributed significantly to the breakdown in these talks and to Washington going ahead and giving him a 3-year contract like most assistants have gotten during this hiring cycle, like most people have gotten. So I think it was a contractual deal where they in Las Vegas weren't willing to give 3 years. Washington was more than happy to give 3 years, and Kliff Kingsbury now is the offensive coordinator in Washington. It also goes to show you, it's really interesting, again, from my standpoint, like Dan Quinn, the news comes out, there's more of a rush than ever in the reporting world to get that a guy's hired. So when is he exactly hired, right? Like, is he hired when both sides agree, or is he hired when he signs the contract? Like, you'll notice Dan Quinn didn't sign the contract until this weekend, but the news came out Thursday that they hired him.
That's your guys' fault. That's you and other insiders' fault, though. Is it just like, and I guess you would be the one that would be able to answer this. So when people just kind of, like Kliff Kingsbury and the Raiders was just understood to be taking place, so it's just like both sides are there.
Yeah. Well, the language, it's always the language. And the language in the Kliff Kingsbury to the Raiders case was the Raiders are expected to hire him. And they were. There was an agreement. They wanted to hire him. He wanted to go. And then they had a disagreement over the contract terms. Now, 98, 99% of the time, they're able to resolve the differences so that when it's reported that a team is expected to hire Pat McAfee as their punter or their offensive coordinator, the host of their show, whatever it may be, that deal is going to get done. In this particular case, the rare case, it didn't.
I guess that's true.
Right?
Because, I mean, when it was announced about our ESPN deal, we are nowhere near signed.
Yeah.
It was like,
there you go.
And we're like, hey.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So who made it such that the deal is done? So that's why I'm always very careful, a lot of people are, about the language used. Like, the Raiders plan to hire Kliff Kingsbury. They expected that. He's not hired. He didn't sign his contract. They're hiring him. Well, they were hiring him until they weren't.
Interesting.
And then Washington's hiring him. So, but it's interesting because, again, all these cases of all these coaches, like it comes out on Carolina, Dave Canales, we reported, oh, he's getting hired. And right away I got texts, hey, it's not done. It's not done. And then 8 hours later, it was done because it almost always gets done. There's an understanding it's going to get done. But in this particular case, with Kliff Kingsbury, talks collapsed over the length of the contract.
That doesn't make any sense. So did you think it was like buyer's remorse there for the Raiders, why they wouldn't just give another year like most teams do? Do you think, like, why do you think that happened with
I think they just, I'm guessing that they just thought that they could get it done at the length that they wanted. And I think that they probably thought that it wouldn't be an issue, but it was an issue. You never know exactly what's going to be important to somebody during the course of a negotiation and whether something like that could wind up breaking a deal, breaking an agreement. And in this particular case, it obviously was very important to Kliff to get that 3rd year, and it was very important to Las Vegas not to give the 3rd year, and neither side was willing to give, and so he leaves. And they don't get it done when both sides thought it was going to get done.
Okay, so that leads to the Commanders, obviously number 2 overall pick. Caleb Williams was with Kliff Kingsbury last year at USC as Kliff Kingsbury was a senior consultant. Caleb Williams posted on his Instagram story, "My dog, congrats." No punctuation.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So my dog, congrats. Okay, through the entire thing. Love everything about it. Both Oklahoma and USC legend Caleb Williams says that. Everybody was just assuming, whenever Kliff interviewed with Chicago Bears, ooh, that's because they're going to take Caleb. Now Kliff is with the Washington Commanders. Ooh, they're going to make a play to get Caleb. How much of that ties into this entire decision, you think?
Well, I think the Commanders make the decision to go get Kliff on its own. Like, that stands on its own merits. Now, Kliff happens to be tied to Caleb, and now you have to wonder if any calls are going to be made. Here's the issue. There are a few issues with this. Number one, are the Bears going to be willing to move on from taking Caleb Williams, which I believe seems to be the widespread consensus across the league, that Caleb Williams will be the number 1 pick. And if they are willing to move on to him, then you have to like either Drake May or Jaden Daniels enough, or Justin Fields. But again, the feeling around the league continues to be that they'll wind up trading Justin. Whether they do or not, we'll see, but that seems to be the feeling. So if they're going to trade Justin, and if they're going to trade the number 1 pick, the question is, do they like one of those other quarterbacks enough? And we're so early in the process that it's hard to know what is real and isn't real, but I don't know that they do. And that's where the trade, I think, gets a little bit bogged down until Caleb Williams starts trying to see if he can manipulate the situation and make it work to the way he would want, which no NFL team is ever going to allow itself to be pushed around. And is he even going to do something like that? We don't know. We know he's from Washington. We know he loves Kliff. There are some things that tell you that at some point in time. But Caleb Williams, to my knowledge, also isn't working with an agent. So whereas John Elway had Marvin Demoff basically manipulating and planning and scheming and strategizing on the situation, and whereas Eli Manning had Tom Condon working on that situation, Caleb is doing it solo right now. I mean, he might be able to get it done if that's what he wants, but I think in cases like this, you need some powerful help if that's what you decide you want to do. And so I think that will be a telltale sign. If all of a sudden we hear in late March, early April that Caleb Williams is hiring an agent when he didn't have one, oh boy.
Well, I'll say this.
Might be on.
I love players representing themselves, being at the table, especially if they're able to do it. Well, Lamar and his mom are able to accomplish with the Baltimore Ravens against what we thought was potentially going to take place. I'm a guy who does not have an agent. So, I appreciate anybody that's able to do that. But they need to start renaming whenever sources are coming out, because anytime we hear Caleb Williams' camp is saying this, all anybody says is, we don't care about Caleb Williams' camp. What we would like to hear is Caleb Williams speak, because I think Caleb Williams is charming, athletic, everything, obviously electrifying. Anytime you hear the camp, I think it's kind of a little bit of a damper on things, but we hope it works out how everybody wants.
Amen.
And we hope Caleb is able to do what he did in college in the NFL, because that'd be great for the biggest league on earth.